Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivardhari Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivardhari Yashoda Nandana Braja Jana Ranjana Yashoda Nandana Braja Jana Ranjana Yamuna Tira Vanachari Yamuna Tira Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Kunja Bihari Jai Vishnu Paramahamsa Acharya Ashtadhara Shuddha Shri Srimad His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada Ki Jai Grantharaj Srimad Bhagavatam Ki Jai. All glories to the assembled devotees. Glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to Shri Guru and Shri Guranga. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. 16. Verse, chapter 9, canto 7. The Science of God is the title of this canto. And the chapter is entitled Prahlāda Pacifies the Lord with Prayers. Trasto Sme Aham Kripana Vatsala Dusahoga Samsara Chakra Kadanad Grasatam Pranitaha Padhaha Swa Karmabir Ushatama Te Angri Mulam Prito Pavarga Sharanam Vyase Kada Nu. What is that? Tastos Biham Kripanavat Saladu Suhogra Samsara Chakra Karanad Grasatam Pranitaha Badasva Karma Bir Ushattama Tengri Mulam Prito Pavarga Sharanam Shavase Kadanu Trastosmiham Kripanavat Saladu Sahogra Samsara Chakra Kadanad Grasatam Pranitaha Badha Sakarma Bir Usattama Tengri Mulam Prito Pavarga Sharanam Yavase Kadatunu Trastosmyaham Kripanavatsaladussahogra Samsara Chakra Karanagrasatam Pranitaha Padasvakarma Ushattamaten Prito Pavaga Sharanam Shavasekadanu Samsara Chakra Kadanagrasatam Pranitaha Baddhasvakarma Virushakhtamating Hrimulam Rito Pavaga Sharanam Sayekadanu Trastaha, frightened. Asmi, am. Aham, I. Kripanavatsala. O my Lord, who are so kind to the fallen souls, who have no spiritual knowledge. Tusaha, intolerable. Ugra, ferocious. Samsara Chakra, of the cycle of birth and death. Kadanat, from such a miserable condition. Grasatam, among other conditioned souls, who devour one another. Pranitaha, being thrown. Badaha, bound. Sakarma bihi, the course by the reactions of my own activities. Ushattama, O great insurmountable. Te, your Angrimulam, to the soles of the lotus feet. Pritaha, being pleased with me. Apavarga Sharanam, which are the shelter meant for liberation from this horrible condition of material existence. Vyayase, you will call me. Kada, when. Nu, indeed. Translation. Commentary by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. O most powerful, insurmountable Lord, who are kind to the fallen souls, I have been put into the association of demons as a result of my activities, and therefore I am very much afraid of my condition of life within this material world. When will that moment come when you will call me to the shelter of your lotus feet, which are the ultimate goal for liberation from conditional life? Purport. Being in the material world is certainly miserable, but certainly when one is put into the association of asuras or atheistic men, it is intolerably so. One may ask why the living entity is put into the material world. Indeed, sometimes foolish people deride the Lord for having put them here. Actually, everyone is put into conditional life according to his karma. Therefore, Prahlāda Mahārāja, representing all the conditioned souls, admits that he was put into life among the asuras because of the results of his karma. The Lord is known as Kripanavatsala because he is extremely kind to the conditioned souls. As stated in Bhagavad Gita, therefore, The Lord appears whenever there are discrepancies in the execution of religious principles. Yada yada hidharmasya glanir bhaviti bharata tadatmanam shijamiham. The Lord is extremely anxious to deliver the conditioned souls, and therefore He instructs all of us to return home, back to Godhead. Sarvadharmam pratyajamame kam sharanam braja. Thus Prahlāda Mahārāja expected that the Lord, by His kindness, would call him again to the shelter of His lotus feet. In other words, everyone should be eager to return home back to Godhead, taking shelter of the lotus feet of the Lord, and thus being fully trained in Krishna consciousness. Om Vigarati Parandasya Gananjana Shlakaya Chakshuvan Maditanmena Tasma Shri Gurave Namaha Makam Karidavachalam Pangam Langayate Girim Yakipatamam Vande Shri Gurundiri Tadadam Vacha Kapadribhishcha Kripa Sindhu Bevacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha. Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasari Gaura Bhaktivinda. Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Translation again. O most powerful, insurmountable Lord, you are kind to the fallen, who are kind to the fallen souls. I have been put into the association of demons as a result of my activities, and therefore I am very much afraid of my condition of life within this material world. When will that moment come when you will call me to the shelter of your lotus feet, which are the ultimate goal for liberation from conditional life? Could someone move the waters over here, the Achman and the cup, please? Thank you. Ramananda Roy and Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, they were speaking, having a Krishna Katha session, which they would have regularly. But one of those particular Krishna Katha sessions are mentioned in the Chaitanya Charitamrita. Not every one of their sessions were mentioned, because then Chaitanya Charitamrita would be too, was it voluminous? What is it? Voluminous. Chaitanya Charitamrita would be too voluminous. Already devotees may have a hard time reading it. What to speak if all of their conversations are in it. Which is an important point. We're followers of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, so we should read Chaitanya Charitamrita and try to understand what's being stated there. Not that we never read Chaitanya Charitamrita. But while they were discussing Krishna, and as it is recorded in Chaitanya Charitamrita, Chaitanya, or Ramananda Roy is taking the role of instructor, and Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is taking the role of a student. And in the conversation, the question comes up: what is the greatest gain for a soul? What is the greatest gain? And the answer is given that the greatest gain is to obtain the association of devotees. That is the greatest gain. And another question comes up is, what is the greatest pain? And the greatest pain is to lose the association of devotees, to not have the association of devotees. This is interesting, very, amazing point. And maybe you could say even more amazing is that sometimes we see that although people taking to Krishna consciousness, they somehow or other don't understand this point. And because they don't understand it, they don't act on it. In other words, they don't really understand that the greatest gain is the association of devotees. And they don't understand that the greatest pain is the association of non-devotees. And sometimes you may wonder, is the person even a devotee? Sometimes that question comes up. Is the person even a devotee? Not that because one is living, has situated their body in a temple, that they are necessarily a devotee, and that they've taken initiation or whatever it may be. Because we see that sometimes they may even prefer the association of non-devotees. They like it. In the association of devotees, it could be very uncomfortable, right? Devotees tend to be the only persons in the world talking about, maybe the only persons in the world talking about kirtan standards, for example. Who else talks about, there's many groups. I don't think any other groups talking about kirtan standards. Well, I had to attend a number of classes recently dealing with kirtan standards, which I don't mind, but I've heard them anyways. But we were spending, different numbers we're spending our time talking about how many, right, jayas do you chant before Sri Krishna Chaitanya. Now, of course, these are important principles because we want to follow what Srila Prabhupada gave us. But I'm just saying, sometimes people, they think devotees are a little bit uptight. A lot of rules, a lot of regulations, a lot of seemingly attachment to how things should be done, how things shouldn't be done. That's one reason people may not like the association of prefer the association of non-devotees, because non-devotees don't really care. And there's a number of other reasons why they may prefer the association of non-devotees. But again, the question is, if a person's not understanding that point, how much really can they be considered a devotee? Or maybe they're a devotee, but they've just become covered by maya, by illusion, and they prefer the association of non-devotees. But nonetheless, it is being stated here by Srila Prabhupada that it's a miserable place, the material world, but it becomes intolerable when one is in the association of atheistic persons or asuras. And the fact that one doesn't feel the fact that one feels comfortable in that association, it's a really unfortunate state. So that's one point. Now, in relation to tolerating living in this world, or you could say maybe even being happy in this world, it's not that one can just be an animal and be happy, like modern people tend to think. You could just be an animal and be happy. And what does it mean to be an animal? As Srila Prabhupada would say almost in every lecture, or at least often. He'd say to be absorbed in eating, sleeping, mating, and defending. But just because one is donned Vaishnav cloth, it doesn't mean that they're transcendental to that. Just because one is a brahmachari, or to be a brahmachari is actually not. It's actually quite rare to find a brahmachari, although there's so many people wearing saffron cloth. But to just because one has donned the saffron cloth of a brahmachari, or sannyasi, or whatever, doesn't mean that they become transcendental to these four principles of eating, sleeping, mating, and defending. Of course, the materialists are completely bewildered by it, following their tongue all over the universe. As many restaurants as possible. As many ways that could gratify the palate as possible. But again, just because one is donned Vaishnav cloth doesn't mean they're transcendental to that. They should try to become transcendental to that. sleeping. It's a great force in the world. How much do we take shelter of it? How much do we like it? How much can we not live without it? Take shelter of it means it's a bit, you sleep and you forget about everything. You forget about all your problems, all your worries. It's like merging, right? Merging into the Brahmajyoti, as we would say sometimes, the Tamajyoti. Mating. I mean, how much are people thinking about that? The materialists are completely bewildered by that. But also, again, it's not that you become you sign up, you join a group called the Hare Krishnas, and you become transcendental to that. It's not so easy to become transcendental to that. Or defending, right? I want to, get this insurance, that insurance, or just thinking about it. It's not so easy to become transcendental to that. What about my future? What am I going to do? How am I going to secure myself? How am I going to, defend my position in the society, in the Hare Krishna society? How am I going to... So in this way, but as Srila Prabhupada said, simple living, high thinking. Now there's a lot to that. There's a whole, But in a sense, what does that mean? It means to simplify these four principles as devotees. Why? Because if we do not simplify these four principles of devotees, and we're always thinking about me, my eating, my sleeping, my mating, my defending. You say, hey, I'm not mating. Well, how much you thinking about it, right? My mating, my defending. We're all just absorbed in all of these things, me and my plans and what I'm going to do and where, then it's a failure, actually. If we don't learn to if we don't learn to simplify these things, we actually fail as a devotee. And it's not an ultimate failure, okay? Neha bhikkhamana shasti, right? Everybody loves that verse. No loss or diminution, right? We're not complete failures, but we don't ultimately get the sidelong glance of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. We don't ultimately get the merciful glance of Srila Prabhupada. We remain neophytes. Perpetually. Life after life. So, Srila Prabhupada emphasized simplifying these principles, these four principles. Why? It's not a foolish, ritualistic, foolish religious dogma Srila Prabhupada was pointing. Everybody, Prabhupada, who said it so many times, repeating. And the devotees say, yeah, I know that. Okay, how much do you follow that? You don't know it. So, he said simplify these things. Why? For the purpose of uplifting the conditioned souls, for the purpose of preaching, for God's sake. And if we don't do that, then the preaching, it's a failure. Because we're too much absorbed thinking about ourselves. And you could say, what's the value of preaching? Well, there is value to it. I mean, Krishna comes and he speaks the Bhagavad Gita. What is he doing there on the battlefield of Kurukshetra? He's just speaking to Arjuna? Yes, he is just speaking to Arjuna, but he's speaking to the whole world. Why does Krishna come as Chaitanya Mahaprabhu? Yes, he's coming to relish the ecstasy of Krishna consciousness, to teach us how to do that. But he also comes to preach. He comes to spread the message, his message. That's why he comes. So to say it's not important means and to not try to simplify these four principles so you could actually do it, not just think about yourself. To not do that means we're missing the point. We're missing the whole point of Krishna consciousness. And then we wonder, why am I unsatisfied? Well, because you're not following the basic principles of Krishna consciousness. It's going completely over our head. And Narada Muni, when he was speaking with Vyasadeva, early in the Srimad Bhagavatam, he's wondering, he's dissatisfied. Vyasadeva is dissatisfied. And you could imagine, I mean, he did a wonderful thing. I mean, you try to write so many verses. You try to write 100 verses. You try to write a book. It's not easy to do. It takes a lot of time, a lot of energy. Even, I mean, I wrote a small book. It's a small book. It took me a lot of time. So I'm not good. But and Vyasadeva wrote just unconceivable amount of verses. And then still he was feeling dissatisfied. So Narada said to him, Narada Muni said to him, or he inquired, are you satisfied by identifying with the body or the mind as object of self-realization? That's what people, I mean, then he says, your inquiries were full and your studies were also well fulfilled, and there is no doubt that you have prepared a great and wonderful work. The Mahabharata, which is full of all kinds of Vedic sequences elaborately explained. You have fully delineated the subject of impersonal Brahman, as well as the knowledge derived therefrom. Why should you be despondent in spite of all of this, thinking that you are undone, my dear Prabhu? Srila Vyasadeva said, all you have said about me is perfectly correct. Despite all this, I am not pacified. I therefore question you about the root cause of my dissatisfaction. For you are a man of unlimited knowledge due to your being the offspring of one who is self-born. So then he continues, glorifying Narada Muni. And then he says, Narada Muni says, you have not actually broadcast the sublime and spotless glories of the personality of Godhead. That philosophy which does not satisfy the transcendental senses of the Lord is considered worthless. So, why aren't devotees feeling satisfied? This is one reason. It's not just referring to Srila Narada Muni, is not just referring to Vyasadeva. It could be seen as reference to us as well. That if we want to be fully satisfied, we have to fully glorify Krishna. We have to preach the message of Godhead. Especially in the brahmachari ashram. You can't, as a brahmachari, I mean, it's possible not to to be a brahmachari pujari or other services, but especially brahmacharis have to get into that mood. Or else they really don't. I mean, but all devotees. And this is what Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, he's coming to teach. And this is what Srila Prabhupada emphasized all the time. It's a missionary movement. Even if you didn't want to join a missionary movement, maybe you should have became a Jain or something. You know, they're not really into that. And if you don't want to go out on the front lines, however you want to describe that, or however you want to see that, you have to do something that is contributing to the preaching mission, and see it like that. Now, but then the question is, it's not just preaching; we have to follow. Because sometimes people preach, preach. Yeah. I'm really preaching, you know. I got this program, I got that program. You know, we got Tuesday, we got Thursday, we got Friday. We're going to start Monday. We got Sunday, right? We're going out today at Harinam, right? Preach. But we have to follow also, and that is also a cause of dissatisfaction. People wondering, why am I satisfied? Well, maybe we're not following strictly as we should. You say, well, I can't follow. I'm too sinful. Okay, we'll try to follow. But in the 8th canto of the Srimad Bhagavatam, when Bali Maharaj, he takes over the whole heavenly planets, right? So, and Aditi, she's feeling disturbed, right? Because she's the mother of the demigods, so they're all out of their positions and everything. So Kashyapa comes and he says, "Why are you? It seems that you're dissatisfied. Have you failed in your duties?" Do we ever think that? Oh, I'm feeling really unhappy. Have I failed in my duties? Now we're thinking, oh, I need something to gratify me. Where's the food? Where's the where's this? Where's that? Where's the gratification? But the failure is and the unsatisfaction is in the duties. That's the cause of dissatisfaction. And he asked her, have you failed in performing your fire yajna? Now we could take this as have we failed in fulfilling our duties to engage in the Sankirtan yajna? It's a yajna, it's a sacrifice. We have to sacrifice. Have we failed in that duty? And he goes on to explain, have you failed in receiving guests properly? Which we're also in that business. I mean, we're in the temple, there's guests. We have to receive them properly. Have you failed in receiving guests properly? Have you failed in performing yajna? Have you failed to satisfy the Brahmins? Have you failed, and he goes on to different things. Have you failed in properly following dharma, artha, kama? Have you failed in your religious principles? So for every ashram, for brahmachari, grihastha, sannyasi, vanaprastha, everyone has religious principles that they need to follow. So another cause of that dissatisfaction is not following those. So one, we have to follow principles, and if we're dissatisfied at all, we should look at that. Am I following principles? And two is that we have to fully glorify Krishna. And if we're dissatisfied, we also have to look at that. So that's another point. And another thing Prabhupada says in the purport is that people, they want to blame Krishna. Oh, they deride Krishna. Foolish people deride Krishna. Oh, I've been put in this situation. He put me here. And the idea is that actually that's not the case. That due to our own past activities, we're in the situation we are in now. We're in this material world. So we cannot blame Krishna. And Krishna is known as Kripana Vatsala, extremely kind to the conditioned souls. He appears to reestablish religious principles and to deliver the fallen conditioned souls. And he does that by establishing principles. What does that mean? It means he teaches. He teaches. And the spiritual master and the devotees, they also teach. So, in order to accept the mercy of Krishna, in order to accept the mercy of the spiritual master, in order to accept the mercy of the devotees, the idea is that we have to accept their teachings. We have to accept what they say. That is if we're interested in the mercy. If we're not interested, then fine. It's free will. It's a big world. Go enjoy. Go play around on the playground. But if we want the mercy, which is actually in our best interest, then we should try to understand what are those religious principles. We should try to follow them to the best of our ability. And Krishna is not expecting us to be perfect, especially in the beginning, because that would be unreasonable. But by trying to follow those, Krishna gives us more strength, or we develop more strength to follow. And eventually, we're following all of Krishna's principles, in which we're getting the full mercy of Krishna. So this is an important point that one should accept some training. This is what Prabhupada says at the end of the purport. In other words, everyone should be eager to return home back to Godhead, taking shelter of the lotus feet of the Lord, and thus being fully trained in Krishna consciousness. So it is important, that training. Traditionally, people would join at age 5, brahmacharis, right? Much simpler back then. It's probably easier to be I don't think they had temple presidents back then, but easier to be a leader of an ashram or a gurukul teacher. It was much easier. I mean, nowadays it's almost nightmarish. I mean, sorry, but there's a lot of very unpleasant things about it. But they join at age 5. You know, their mind is not developed. You know, their body is not developed. They're children, and then they're trained. You know, they learn from you what is right, what is wrong, what should be done, what should not be done. Everything they learn from you, and then most of them later, when they're 25 or so, they get married, and then they're trained up, and then the women are trained up in a particular way, and then this helps with successful family life, which gives stabilization to the whole society. And of course, there's a vanaprastha ashram, sannyas ashram, which is recommended. Not everyone takes sannyas, but some householders. So in this way, things were much more simple. And nowadays, I mean, sometimes you wonder how it's even possible. I guess in many places it's not possible. There's not so many brahmachari ashrams in America for a reason. But as far as possible, everyone should try to accept training, and even though it's very difficult, having come to accept training when they're adults, 18, 20, 25, whatever. And as far as possible, Prabhupada did recommend devotees, if they can, to remain brahmacharis. If possible, it is possible. But again, but if one doesn't do that, if they get married, then that's also fine. But the basic principle is that we have to try to simplify things, simplify our lives so that we could get the full benefit. Okay, does anybody have any question? Yes. Okay, can you pass her a mic, please, somebody?
You said we have to simplify our lives?
Yes.
How do we simplify?
How do we simplify it when it's complicated?
Yes.
Yeah. You got to get rid of the internet. That's one way. Of course, it's a tough thing, right? Oh, the internet. Oh, no. How could we ever live without the internet? Then you won't, yeah. Well, I mean, Srila Prabhupada wanted to take over the world, and that means many things. Of course, he wanted to create farm communities, and I mean, it's very challenging. I mean, sometimes people say, farm ki jai, varnashram ki jai, 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 jai. I mean, they can't even stay in one place. You know, very passionate. So farm community means you're not going all over the universe, jumping from farm to farm, from community to community like a monkey. You're in one place, you know. Try that, modern people. It's very difficult, you know, to stay in one place, especially farm, especially with no internet. Oh my God. But Srila Prabhupada wanted to establish such things, which is a big challenge, which devotees are trying to do throughout the world in bigger and smaller ways. Mostly the critique is smaller ways. But yeah, living in the city, I mean, Srila Prabhupada did establish temples in the city, like we have one right here in holy Pacific Beach, or not so holy Pacific Beach. The only thing holy about it is, I mean, of course there's some churches around and stuff, but got the temple here. But in terms of simplifying it in this setting, it does present some challenges. But one thing that we could do is that if we have very strong spiritual practices we associate with the devotees, we're chanting, we're reading as much as possible, then that will, you could say, prevent us, or that will protect us from developing or acting on unnecessary desires that complicate our life. Like, for example, we may think that, oh, I need a better standard of living, so I should accept another job, or I should accept 3 jobs, so I could get a better grip on things. I could get live in a nicer place of the city, or a bigger house, or whatever it may be. So in that way, but then it becomes more complicated, and then we have less time for Krishna consciousness. So, but if we practice following religious principles and doing things as far as possible, nicely in Krishna consciousness, then that will protect us from those desires. And then we won't overcomplicate our lives. So by spiritual happiness, by experiencing, Krishna consciousness, then we'll be able to not over-endeavor. That's one of the things Rupa Goswami says, to over-endeavor. He says this is one of the detrimental things to Krishna consciousness, which over-endeavor practically means complicating things. That's one point. You had something? Okay, you're holding the mic. Okay. Does anybody? Yes, Srivada Prabhu.
Just one note. You read either directly. Yeah, I think you read it out of the book there. Is that the first canto book? The translation to text, first canto, 5th chapter, text 8. And this is where Narada Muni is explaining to Vyasadeva why he's dissatisfied. And it says that you have actually not broadcast the sublime and spotless glories of the personality of Godhead. He's referring to all the writings that he did previously. Now, among those writings is the Mahabharata, and within the Mahabharata is the Bhagavad Gita. Mm-hmm. And there's also Padma Purana, where there's a lot of things about Krishna. So that phrase, you have actually not, is not what Prabhupada said. Mm-hmm. And it's not what the Sanskrit said. Anudita praya means almost not. Means that the majority of your writings, if you just take the syllable by syllable, does not deal directly with the glories of Krishna. But certainly there are parts of it that do. And therefore the translation now reads, which is probably what Prabhupada said, you have practically not broadcast the sublime. Yeah. Almost not. In other words, he has, but that's why he's satisfied. It wasn't, and that's why the Bhagavatam says in the 2nd verse, all the cheating religions are kicked out, wholly and solely glorifying Krishna, his devotees, and the process of devotional service. Yeah. So that's the.
Thank you. It's a good point that Srila Vyasadeva, it's not that he didn't glorify Krishna, he did. There's the Bhagavad Gita and other books. But as Narada Muni is saying, you need to go a little further. Like with the talks of Ramananda Roy and Chaitanya, go a little further. It's a very essential point in Krishna consciousness, because we cannot just kind of stop, because the tendency in the material world is to stop at a particular point. But we need to go a little further. And that's what Krishna consciousness is all about, going a little further. going a little further, going a little further. It doesn't necessarily mean increasing activities, not necessarily. We could be doing the same things we're doing. It could mean internally going a little further. So yeah. Any other last online? Anyone there? Maybe you're there, but don't. Anything to say online? Was I speaking to the online audience? I'm not sure. I'm not sure who's watching. I was mostly speaking to the people in this room, but if something in the class had to do with you, then that's good. Okay. All right. Okay. Granth Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai, Srila Prabhupada ki jai, Hari Bol.